PEMG.
Peace. My name is Jamarhl Crawford, and today I wanted to talk about something that's very serious, and it's actually unfortunate that I have to talk about this, but it's something that I experienced in my life that I don't think that it's appropriate for me to remain silent on any longer, and it's part of a larger problem. In any event, this particular conversation is about one individual named Gareth Saunders. Many of you may know Gareth Saunders. He was a former city councilor for District 7, which is the Roxbury district, where currently Chuck Turner sits. I used to work for Gareth Saunders. In order to talk about what happened when I worked for Gareth Saunders and my reasons for leaving his employment, I need to go back to how I originally met Gareth Saunders. When I was a young man, there was a program out of ABCD that was run by some good brothers, and it was called the Club Program, Career and Life United in Boston. I was a member of that group, and it was about matching young men with mentors, in respective fields of the young men's interests, and helping them get their resume together. There were GED programs, and the typical type of program. It was for men ages 18 to 25, so I believe I was 18 at the time. So in any event, me being part of the quote-unquote what I thought was the little cool group in the back, me and my little buddies, we used to sit back there and we used to analyze, the different people who would come in, both the young men who would come into the program and the older men who would come in the program. We would develop our own, assessment of these people, right or wrong. It's just, this is what we did. So there was a group of people who came in after the original people were there, who were mentors. They brought in a group of, at that time, older men in professional careers, and we, would sit back and be like, oh, this dude, okay, he seems cool. This one seems corny. Or this one seems gay. At this time, as young men, many in our community do, we pointed out. I don't want to debate the right or wrong of that either. I just want to say that it happens, and it happened in this case. So, sure enough, they introduced Gareth Saunders at that time as a mentor. He was working in the financial world at that time, working, I believe, with what was then Bay Banks, which I believe then became Citizens and all this. But in any event, he was working at Bay Banks at the time as a young financial. Another gentleman who was there, who he was friends with, was John Rich. John Rich was became Boston Public Health Director later on. At that time, he was just a young doctor. Then there was another man, Richard Williamson. Richard Williamson was kind of like a youth counselor, social worker type, who went on to later found an organization in response to Boston street crime called God's Posse. And Richard then was on the cover of every newspaper in Boston for molesting, several of the young men that he was counseling under his God's Posse organization. You can look that up. In any event, so these are the three people who entered in the program at the same time, who were friends before they got there, who became mentors. Then they ushered in a new group of young men. One of these young men who, just for his own privacy, I'll only use his first name. I'm going to say Michael. For Michael, who came in, we immediately, once again in the back, we immediately saw that this kid was broken. And we didn't make fun of him or nothing, but he said he was just broken. You could see that he had been through some stuff in his life where he was broken. And now knowing what I know about the streets and he's the type of person that whoever he would have ran into who had bad intentions for him could have easily dissuaded him or got him to do anything. He was just a kid where you could see he had a broken spirit. And me and the other brothers really felt bad for him, whatever. So in any event, really soft-spoken, shy, a little on the feminine side, and and what have you. In any event, the mentors got paired up with the mentees, and And sure enough, Gareth became the mentor of this young man, Michael. The other men were assigned to other young men, but it soon became clear that they kind of abandoned the young men they were assigned to, and they all began to focus on Michael. And it became kind of like a triple mentoring on this one young man. You know, people in there, we had our little jokes and whatnot, nothing, but you know, nobody really never thought anything about it. Flash forward, and then just to prove, here, this button here is the button from the club. I keep all sorts of stuff. This is a thing from my past club, just so you know that the program does and did exist. That's that. In any event, you know, from that, you know, I matriculated on and left. I shortly thereafter left and, you know, went on to Atlanta and began my life, whatnot. And I was gone from Boston for 7 years. And I returned in 7 years, not having thought about the club or Gareth or Michael or anybody from that for some time. Got back to Boston and, you know, I had a baby on the way and was looking for a job desperately. Happened to bump into Gareth, who was now the city councilor. And, you know, I had a pleasant conversation. How you been? It's good to see you. I told him, man, I need a job. And, you know, at the time, he was good enough and basically, long story short, gave me a job. Me being the type of straight-up individual that I am, I confessed to him, because I thought it was really major in him doing. I confessed to him, A, I had a record, and B, that I smoked marijuana. I wanted him to know that just in case a drug test came up or anything like that. I also assured him I'm not a knucklehead. I'm not going to come to work high or be getting high, you know, out back of work, particularly working at City Hall, nothing like that. But I just wanted to be fair and open and honest. Gareth was like, nah, it's okay. And at the time, I was really thankful, like, man, thank you for giving me a chance. Man, I really am appreciative of that, so on and so forth. I took the job. My business card. The business card here. So I began to work for City Councilor Gareth Saunders in the Boston City Hall office. Now, I was the manager or director of operations and public relations, which also included, you know, technology at the time, you know, updating the computers and getting them hip to new technology and the internet and blah, 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 so on and so forth. So I did that. But I was also seen as a lightning rod because of my appearance didn't fit in with the normal appearance at City Hall. At that time, I had long dreads, and I didn't wear suits. And that was quite shocking in the era of City Hall that I was in, with people like Jim Kelly, Dapper O'Neil, and Mickey Roach in there. And I was one of few young black men who worked in City Hall. And out of all the young black men who worked in City Hall, I definitely had the closest association with the street, let's say, with the hood, with the community. And I had my own ideas. I was also very openly pro-black on my politics. So, needless to say, that was a big situation in and of itself. I began working for Gareth Saunders. We began to get cool, and like I said, I had known him from this program before, so our relationship, you know, worked professionally, and we became friendly. In the course of my work there, doing some of my technical work, I had to go home because the computers at City Hall just weren't up to par, didn't have Photoshop, blah, blah, blah. So I asked Gareth, hey man, can I go home and do this? It'd be a lot easier to do this at home. He let me work at home. So I was at home working, and I worked well beyond my 9 to 5 obligation. So it was like 8 or 9 at night, and I was still working on this thing. He was supposed to come by and check the progress of, I believe it was a newsletter at the time, to check the progress of it. And I told him, hey, just call before you come. He didn't call before he came, and he popped up on my doorbell unannounced, ding dong, and I was surprised by this. And I was like, man, listen, remember how I told you that I don't smoke, I smoke reefer and I wouldn't smoke at work? Well, you know, I'm home. I didn't smoke during the day when I'm working, but now it's 9 o'clock, and, you know, I've been working way overtime, not getting paid for the overtime, not making a big deal about that, but I'm smoking. And you came to my house unannounced, so I just want to let you know. He was like, hey, you know, no big deal, I still come in. And I was like, wow, okay, you know, wow, that's really big of you again. I thought that this was really big of him, so no big deal. So he came in. Now smoke is in the air. Make a long story short, 15 minutes go by as I'm showing him the newsletter and whatnot. 15 minutes go by. He said, hey, can I get a hit of that? Wow, you know, but my politics are pretty liberal. I didn't think any big deal about it. I think a lot of people smoked marijuana at that time. You know, the Bill Clinton thing had come out about him smoking marijuana. It just wasn't that big of a deal. So, you know, he smoked marijuana. No big deal. Flash forward now, through the course of our relationship, you know, he began requesting marijuana from me. I wasn't comfortable with that, you know, so on and so forth. I shut that down. After I shut that down, his attitude began to change from me from pleasant and happy-go-lucky to very cold at the office and everything like this. Now, this time, I was organizing the first ever Black History Month celebration at City Hall. So I was really trying to handle my business, and I was really bothered by his attitude because I didn't want to engage in this type of behavior with him. You know, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. So at this time, we weren't speaking or anything other than at the office, and like I said, it was very cold. A couple weeks go by. Out of the blue one night, at 12:30 at night, oh, part of self, interject this. Of course, during the times that, you know, that he was around me and smoking marijuana, it's the type of drug that has the tendency to make people talk and go into these long philosophical conversations about life or what have you. And also, too, drinking beers. And, you know, he was one of the guys, let's say, at this point. So we had a lot of deep conversations in the course of us, you know, hanging out together outside of the office. And in those conversations, you know, I told him about my life since he had last known me at the club, being a young man who had did cocaine, both sniffed it and put it in cane squares, selling it, and also, too, then later on smoking oolies. And I told him about this, and I told him about how cocaine, just as a demon, had almost ruined my life, and I just hated it, and just really wanted all my homeboys who were still engaging in either doing it or selling it to just get away from it. It's poison, and I just went on a big anti-cocaine tirade based on my own personal experiences in my life and what it's done to some good people around me. In any event, so flash forward now. Late one night, out the blue, after we hadn't been talking for several weeks at least, and there was tension between us, I get a call after midnight during the weekday. Hey man, what's going on? It's Gareth. I'm like, Gareth? You know, what you calling me for like this? Hey man, you know, I was just thinking about you, and you know, I just wanted to say, check up on you, how you doing? And I'm just like, okay, you know, what's going on? Hey man, you know, remember how we had been talking about those oolies? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, man. You know, well, you know, I'm just chilling, and you know, I was thinking, man, you know, maybe I want to try one. And I was like, you want to try one? Now this is around the time that Marion Barry had just come out, you know, and been exposed with the crack cocaine. And I'm like, yo, is you crazy? Oh, and for those that don't know, a oolie is when you take a marijuana in either a joint or a blunt. You have a crack rock, you crush up the crack rock, and then you sprinkle it or lace it over the joint or the blunt, and you inhale it. At the time when I used to do this in my youth, I justified it by saying I ain't smoking crack, whatever. Now that I'm back in my right mind, sanity, you know, you recognize that however you're ingesting crack, you are a crackhead. And you were smoking crack. Because when you put it in a joint or a blunt, now that becomes the pipe. You know, as opposed to people just sprinkling on a pipe. You're using the marijuana joint as a pipe to suck the crack into your lungs and get high. So he says to me on the phone that he wants to try this. I was like, you know, my exact words was, nigga, are you bugging? And I was really, you know, angry and upset, and I blitzed on him for a good minute. And he's like, nah, man, you know, I was just thinking that, you know, you could help me. And because of the past nature of our relationship being based around marijuana, I assumed that he wanted me, because he said he needed my help, that he wanted me to get him some weed. So I was like, man, I'm not getting you no weed so you could smoke a oolie. No, he's like, oh, nah, man, no, I already got the weed. I'm not asking you to give me no weed. You know, I need some rock. I said, what? Man, he wanted me to go get him some rocks. So I was once again very angry, and I went off on crazy, man. I ain't getting you no stuff like that. Why don't you go get it? And I knew what the problem was, but I forced it out of him. This is a long conversation. We had at least 20, 30 minutes. Forced it out of him. Like, he's like, I can't go get it. Why not, man? He's like, oh, man, I got a reputation to maintain. I said, what do I got? I'm supposed to go out there on my block and talk to some kids that I grew up with and ask them for crack and tell them, yeah, I need some crack. It's for my friend. Come on, man. Then next thing you know, then Jamarhl Crawford is a crackhead. That's the word on the street. So now I'm not doing that. I got a job, man. I'm working for you. And I didn't see drug flunky on my job description. So I was also insulted that you think that I'm stupid enough to risk my life or whatever to go out there to get you a little, 20 rock or something off of my block. He's like, man, well, yeah, I know that you know where to get it. Yeah, I know where to get it. Every corner in your district. That's my exact words, what I told him. Every corner in your district, you go out there and get it. And then I cussed him out, told him, man, you really picked the wrong person to ask this, man. So I'm fuming. We get off the phone. I'm heated. So to be clear, Gareth Saunders asked me to go out and get for him crack cocaine, to purchase crack cocaine for him to use, for him to smoke. So I go to work the next day, livid. Yo, Gareth, we got to talk. You made a real wrong decision. You made a real mistake asking me to do that. I got integrity. I don't get down like that. You know what I mean? My grandmother voted for you. So now you asking me to basically lie to my grandmother and all the people in my community that you defrauding because they think you're a respectable guy, a stand-up guy, and you running around here smoking crack. This is crazy. So I told him, he needed to make a decision about the future of his political career. And I told him, that if he didn't do something quick, I was going to go public. So I gave him 7 days to think about it. And in that time, I also gave him my 2 weeks notice. Okay? Because I couldn't work under them, couldn't work with somebody like that. So in any event, during that time, of course, I'm clearly depressed. I'm about to lose or walk away from the best job I had in my life in terms of money and benefits and all that type of stuff. And it's just, I'm crushed. I'm disillusioned because, while my thoughts of Gareth was he was like a nerd or, a little punky, I didn't think he would be, smoking no crack. I didn't know he was a geek monster. So, and from my level of where I'm coming from the street, that's not something that is reputable or respectable or acceptable. So in any event, I'm going through it, I'm depressed, and and I'm confiding with my members of my own family, like what I should do and this and that. I have an uncle who's a busybody. He's Italian, he's an older dude. He's the type of dude who reads the newspaper every day, every page, the obituaries, the want ads, everything. And when I'm telling him the story, he's like, oh man, you didn't know Gareth was all messed up? Something was in the paper about him with a young boy and the police being called to his house. I says, what? Tells me the story, blah, blah, blah. Now, at the time when I'm working for Gareth, you got to understand, I'm answering the phones and stuff like that. And every day there was this person who used to call the office every day, whose name was Michael. And this person had a real feminine voice and whatnot, but that's not strange. We got constituents and people got family members and all that, so I didn't really take that as strange. We just calling every day. So and Gareth used to say that was his nephew of it. All right, so now flash forward. I do my own digging and start asking people I know who are in the know about these type of things, either connected through the police or just people who know stuff. And they, had heard rumors as well about this particular story, and come to find out the boy's name in the report was Michael. I put 1 and 1 together, got 2 and added another 1 and came up with 3, because this was the same Michael who was calling every day at the office. And this is also the same Michael from years ago from the club program who had first became Gareth's mentor and now was living with Gareth at Gareth's duplex that he owned with John Rich on Harrishoff Street around the corner from my house. I didn't put all this together, but when it came down, it came like a ton of bricks. So I ascertained, and now, this is up for people. You go do your own research, whatever, As I understand, there has been court paperwork out there. I'm trying to get it myself because I want to be able to show the documentation. But, there's something, happened, and there was some sort of court case involving some sort of sexual relationship between Gareth and this young man. So now that I found this out, I'm still working there because this is during my 2 weeks notice that I gave, and still during his 7-day period that I gave him to decide what he wants to do. So I go storming back in the day after I found out this information. I'm like, Gareth, man, you know, I heard this and da-da-da-da-da. Now tell me who's been calling. That's Michael. And tell me that that's this dude and da-da-da-da-da. He hushes me up. He's like, let's talk about this after work. Da-da-da-da-da. So after work, he's giving me a ride home. You know, and I just blow up on him and I tell him all this stuff about all my feelings about him being in male-on-male homosexual relationships with young men. When I say young men, I mean from teenager on into young 20s or whatever, basically living a secret gay lifestyle, but also having pedophilic tendencies because it also included people who were under the legal age of consent. All right, so I just want to be clear on that. So this is what I'm confronting him with, and I'm blowing up, and da-da-da. He basically says, no, not basically said, his verbatim reply to me from my recollection, which is pretty good. He says to me, Jamarhl, let's just say that there are times in my life when I have been curious as to my sexuality. And let's just say that all those curiosities have been satisfied. And I was like, yeah, let's just say that, Gareth, because I don't want to know the sloppy details. But based on the couple of scenarios that I had discussed with him in the car, to me, that was him confirming to me that what I was bringing up to him was true. So that's my statement. Basically, Gareth Saunders, while he was in office, was actively using cocaine and asked me to purchase crack cocaine for him while he was in office. While I was under his employment, asked me to purchase crack cocaine for him. And subsequently, I also found out about a secret homosexual lifestyle that he was leading, which included pedophilia by dealing with men under the age of consent. So my belief is that the relationship that he had with Michael began when I was a youth, and Michael was younger than me. All right, so this is what's happened. I brought it out to him. He confirmed it to me, and many people know rumors. Now, why am I doing this? This all happened in 1997. Okay, you know, actually no, pardon myself, 98. This all happened in 1998, and you know, it's been a long time. I told Gareth, you know, he needs to disappear from public view. He decided after those 7 days, he told me he was not going to run for re-election, which was good enough for me. He was going to bow out gracefully. Subsequently, we got Chuck Turner. And there it is. And I zoned out for all those years and just was really disgruntled and disheartened and disillusioned. And, you know, with politics in general and some of our elected officials, it put me on to a path of studying this thing, and I found more people who also are living these double lives, homosexual, that include pedophilic relationships with young men, all throughout the churches and other positions of power throughout Boston, in the schools, in the criminal justice system, parole, probation, so on and so forth. There's a lot of people out there who are engaging in these type of activities in our city and preying on young men and young women. But in any event, it became important for me so that nobody else gets victimized. So, I've heard of other instances since that have made my skin crawl about Gareth Saunders. I'm trying to find out, get all the details and get the paperwork on those, and get the people who experienced this to come forth and tell their story too. Because only when we begin dealing with full exposure can we stop something like this from going on. Because right now, Gareth had announced that he was going to be running for mayor, and he has run for mayor before, and I called him, and I'll make this public now. I've had conversations with Pastor Dickerson, who is the reverend, the pastor of the church that Gareth now attends. He used to go to Jubilee, New Covenant, along with Richard Williamson from God's Posse and John Rich. You should look that up too. The Richard Williamson case is also, because that was Gareth's homeboy. So in any event, I had a conversation with Dickerson the first time that Gareth decided he was going to run several years ago, and I told Dickerson my intent to go public. it became a non-issue because Gareth did not file his paperwork in time, so it became a non-issue. His campaign ended at that time. But I definitely made it known that I would go public if he continued to seek to become into public office. And now it has arisen again. He says, at first I heard he was going to run for city council. Now I've heard that he's going to run for mayor, which not only is a crazy idea because he doesn't have the base nor the finances to win, but in light of the information I told you and the lifestyle that he lives. Now, if he wants to confess this to people and tell people that he took drugs while he was in office and in his past he's had secret homosexual relationships with young men, and people then choose to still vote for him, then hey, then I'm out of it, as long as the people are informed. But I don't want anybody to be under the illusion of this man being an upstanding, respectful citizen, or for some young kid who's interested in politics to volunteer for his campaign, and then years later I find out another kid got molested. I would feel personally responsible for that. So that's why I'm stopping it. And before anybody gives any money to him, I mean, like I said, at that time, my grandmother thought he was a great guy and had voted for him. Now, how did that make me feel where I take a job because I thought I was going to be doing something good for my community, and a lot of people rely and depend on this guy in the community, and it turns out he's, he's very not scrupulous. So now, for instance, difference with Chuck Turner. I have disagreements with Chuck Turner, but those are political differences. I don't think Chuck Turner would ever do anything like this. And this type of thing is just ridiculous, and it has to be stopped. And, the churches, this has to be discussed, because a lot of these people are commingling, and seek refuge in the churches. And not only refuge, but they go there because it's an ample supply of young boys that they can influence and potentially hurt and harm with this type of pedophilic homosexual tendencies. And the young girls as well. A lot of older men in the churches are dealing with women who are underage. There were a lot of famous cases right here in Boston, but I saved that for another time. But I just want to put this out here. My name is Jamarhl Crawford. My phone number is 617-755-6463. You can call me. I'm easy to find. You can email me, Blackstonian, BlackStonian @Verizon.net. And I recognize the legal ramifications of what could happen here. People that I talked about when I thought about doing this told me, well, he could sue you for slander. Well, I welcome the challenge. Slander, I know what the legal definition of that is, and I would be glad to go into court and answer any charges of slander. He knows what's true. I am willing, if it went to that level, just to prove that I'm telling the truth, I'd be willing to take a lie detector or whatever. I wouldn't have done this if it was a lie. I don't seek personal glory. I don't even see how one could get personal glory out of this. If anything, is could get me in trouble. I also don't, have any kind of get back at Gareth thing. I'm the one that left the job and resigned. I probably could have forced them to, pay me off, get me another job. I didn't want any of that. I believe in God, and I got kids. I got a daughter. So I wouldn't want to see this happen to her or any other person. I counsel a lot of young men who have been the victims of sexual molestation, and I know it's serious and it's nothing to play around with. So, in good conscience, I could remain silent no longer. Once again, Jamarhl Crawford, 617-755-6463, Blackstonian @Verizon.net. Thank you for your time. I hope you take this seriously. Do your own investigation. If you have problems, get at me. Gareth already knows I don't need to talk to him. There's nothing to talk about. It's not like a negotiation. I have spoken with his pastor twice, and that's good enough for me. Now it's public.